assign
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, basically I'm having some questions around like sprint planning. Few of
Mm-hmm.
them I had already posted. So I'll give you like few scenario or like let's say I have two projects. Okay.
Okay.
For
Okay.
each project I have three developer,
Mm-hmm.
then one QA for each project. So I have total eight resource and one backend developer and a Figma and one Figma designer. So there are total 10 resources I have. I'm having a sprint of 2 weeks. So
No
what
BS.
is the sorry?
No BS.
Yeah, yeah, BA is there. Yeah, BA and product manager.
What about PO?
Product manager is there. No product owner. Product owner, product manager is there.
Okay.
Okay. No scrum master is
And
not there. Yeah.
one BA for each team, right?
No, one BA for both the projects
For both projects.
and one PM only for both the projects. Only developer and QA are there for each project, like four resource, three developer, one QA.
Mm-hmm.
Designer and backend developer is also common.
Okay.
Okay, so let's say I have to do or I have to do sprint planning. I have to include few stories. The first
Mhm.
question is like for each resource, how many efforts I should plan. What will be the standard way of efforting? Like one day is equal to one effort, or how many hours is equal to one effort. So how basically I plan the things.
Okay. Uh, so there are two questions here, right? One is how will you estimate the effort?
Hmm,
And second thing is how will you plan out your sprint,
correct.
right?
And what will be the bandwidth that I need to consider for each resource?
That will be part of your sprint planning, right?
Correct, correct.
Hmm. Okay. Is it an agile project?
Yeah, it is Agile project.
Okay, and I'm assuming Scrum. It's a Scrum teams, right?
Yeah,
Scrum
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 team.
team.
Correct, correct.
Okay. So first of all, when you are saying there are two separate projects, so basically
Hmm,
what you are suggesting is that there are two different Scrum teams, right? So
yeah,
uh, the Scrum teams are supposed to be self sufficient teams. It means there should not be a very much distinction between the people like BA, Dev, and QC. So what happens? So what scenario that you are telling is a practical scenario, right? Right,
correct,
where you have a Dev and a BA and a QC team.
correct.
Okay. So there are two different Scrum teams. So one thing you have to notice that the planning and the effort estimation and everything will be different. So
Okay,
don't look into two teams from a single angle. Okay. So you have to say that there is one team and there is another team, because the
okay.
performance of one team can be different from performance of another team, right? It
Hmm,
is possible that one team is looking into complex items, other team is looking into very easy items, so you don't know, right? So one
hmm,
team may be working on in a brand new thing, other team might be working on just implementing whatever is there, right? So there are different type of work. So it's not like one lens fit all, right? So you have to divide your you have to do sprint planning and effort estimation separately for both the teams. Make
okay.
sense, Pupa? Yeah.
Uh, Sorry, I got a call, so it was disconnected in between.
Okay. No, so what I am saying is, since there are two teams, you will have to plan out for both the teams separately. You
Okay,
won't plan them together, right? Because
understood.
developers are different, QC is different, right? Um,
Hmm.
so you won't plan them together. You will plan them separately, because one team may be working on complex items, other team may be working on simple items. So work will be different. So accordingly, team might be, team planning will be different.
Okay,
Okay.
understood.
Uh, Second thing is, in Scrum, there are two concepts. One is velocity and other is capacity. When we say
Hmm.
velocity, that means how much. work your team is aiming for in a particular sprint. Okay.
Okay.
So with which speed they will go. And capacity is how much effort the team has, right?
Mhm.
So let me talk about capacity first. So capacity is something like, I have, you know, 5 people in my team, 3 developers, one QC, one BA. Yeah. So BA is 50% working on it. So BA's capacity is just zero point 0.5 in a week, right? And dev and QC is completely 8 hours available. So accordingly, you'll say, 40 hours for dev, for 4 resources, and 20 hours for one resource. So you'll find out your capacity like that, right? So how much um, availability the team will have. Now, in the second week, let's say, one person is planning for a leave, other person is
Mm.
on a long leave, right? And then there is a holiday, so no one will be available on that team. So accordingly, you will calculate the hours
Okay.
of how much the team's availability is, and that's your
Okay.
capacity, right? So from your capacity, you'll get an idea of how much velocity you are going to deliver in a particular sprint. So your velocity will remain same sprint by
Mhm.
sprint. So you'll say how you will ascertain your velocity is, you'll find out an average of how much velocity you have delivered in the previous sprints. So let's say your sprint one, you delivered some 30 story points. Sprint 2, you delivered 50 story points. So what's the velocity? 30 plus 50, 80 divided by 2 sprints. So 40 hours, right? So 40 story points. So your velocity is 40 story points. Then the third sprint comes. Then the fourth sprints come. Then the fifth sprints come. So you'll find out how much effort, or how much story points you're delivering per sprint. And then you will figure out, you'll find out an average for it, dividing it by number of sprints you are considering, and that will give you a velocity of how much story points the team is delivering. And then you will see, when you'll plan out, so it's basically, first of all, BAs won't be planning out the sprints. It's mainly a PM or a product manager's job, or the scrum master's job. But what will happen is, you'll know that I am aiming for so many story points in this sprint, but that is based on a particular set of capacity. So that's based on full capacity. But in this
Yes.
particular sprint, I am having lesser capacity. You won't have more capacity, right? So your full
Correct.
capacity is so many hours. So based on your full capacity, this is the velocity I have delivered on an average. Now this sprint, I'll have a lesser capacity. So proportionately, you'll figure out how much velocity you will be delivering in this sprint. That is how many story points you will be delivering in total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
Clear?
understood. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So again, the question is like, let's say there is 8 working hours for each resource, and I want to do efforts like, and there are 10 available days. So what is the standard way of efforting it? Like, should I consider one day as a one effort, and out of 8 hours, what will be the exact working hours that I need to consider? So that
so
is my second question.
yeah, it mainly depends on your project manager, how much
Hmm.
buffer he wants to keep, right?
Okay.
So some project managers are very stringent. They'll be like, 8 working hours, so I'll keep 8 hours only, right? Some
Mm.
project managers are very lenient. They'll be like, I know that no one will be able to work for more than 6 hours, right?
Mm.
Or team doesn't work more than 6 hours, so they'll keep a 6 hours, 6 as working hours, right? And then they keep 2 hours for email checking and attending scrum calls and all. So depends on your project manager, and depends on his past experience, or what's the standard across the organization. So some
Okay.
project managers keep 7 hours. Below 6 hours will be too less. Yeah,
Yeah.
eight is eight is ideal, but no one delivers, or no one works for 8 hours, and that's a hard truth. Yeah. So
As per you, what will be the standard? I am just asking. Like, if you want to do effort testing, what you will consider 6 plus 2 or 7 plus 1? What you will consider?
no, I'll consider 6 hours, right? Because
6 hours.
keeping 6 hours will give me more buffer.
Okay. Okay.
Right?
So Yeah, and if you are considering one day as a one effort, so one effort will be 6 hours. Now I have 10 effort for each resource. So you will calculate the work while assigning as a 10 effort only, or within that also you will keep some buffer. Like I'll keep buffer of 8 hours, 8 efforts, and two will be for bug resolution or like that. So what you will do, or what will be the standards? So that is my second question.
No, so I have to consider both. So one thing is I won't double, keep buffer at two places. If I am
Mhm.
considering 6 working hours out of 8 hours, I won't factor in buffer again. But if I'm counting 8 hours out of 8 hours, then I'll consider one day as a buffer, right? So
Mhm.
that's I won't do I won't keep buffers twice, because if I do that, then
Mhm.
my plan will be will stretch out, right? And then it becomes possible that the client is like, no, no, I don't want to wait for so much time, let me look for some other vendor which can deliver in a shorter time, right? We don't want to end up in a situation where we end up losing the project because we are keeping so much of buffer. So we have to give some realistic or acceptable timelines to the customer, right? So we won't be able to keep too much buffer in between. But again, I have to keep some buffer for the delays and for safeguarding
Mhm.
my deliveries. So I'll keep
Mhm.
one time I'll consider a buffer. I won't consider the buffer twice. That's one thing.
Okay.
The second thing that you have talked about is planning for the bugs, planning for the stories, right? So the both are important aspects, and I have to plan accordingly. So if my velocity is, let's say, 50 story points, so in the first sprint, yeah. So let's say it's a new project but the team is old and I already have my average sprint velocities set up. So if my team is supposed to deliver 50 story points in the first sprint, I won't keep any time for buffer for bug fixing, right? Maybe second sprint also I won't keep anything for bug fixing, because my QC will start testing in the second sprint effectively. Yeah. Let's say the structure is like dev will deliver and then QC will test. Though QC will start testing in middle of the sprint, but just for the sake of the example, I'm keeping it like that. But in S3 onwards, I need to factor in that 10% of my time will go into bug fixing. Yeah. So I have to consider both. I can't leave one thing or the other behind. Plus, I will also say, if I'm working on a product, then I will also say, let me keep 10% on working on technical depth items. So all this work needs to be done, right? I can't push it back, or I can't keep it on hold and I'll do it together in the end. It won't work like that. Na? So I have to plan for all the items which are there in the sprint. Sprint does not mean user stories only. when I say product backlog, it does not mean only user stories. Product backlog comprises of each and everything that the team needs to do, and that will include user stories, that will include documentation, that will include bug fixing, that will include some POCs, that will include technical depth items, right? So each and everything that the team needs to do, that will be part of my backlog. And again, it's not task level things, right? It's a above task level. It's the user story or bug, that needs to be catered for. So as a project manager, I can't ignore any aspect. I'll consider both in my planning. Does that answer your question, Roshan?
We are planning 10 items for each sprint, but what we are expecting that 10 items need to be delivered within that sprint, or it should be completed, like the testing part as well as the development part. So that is a like correct expectation, or how it is. Sometimes what happens, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So let's assume 10 stories, and it's just one first sprint and no bugs we are talking about, right? So let's say
Mhm,
there are 10 stories which are
mhm,
present in sprint backlog. So there is a
mhm.
product backlog, and now we have created a sprint backlog. So what we will do is we will figure out what are the story points on each of these items, or what's the effort on each of these items. There are two ways of effort estimation, yeah, broadly. One is absolute estimation, I like to call it, and other is relative estimation. So what happens in absolute estimation is, how much effort in hours the person will take, or the developer will take, or the team will take, right? So you'll say, this item will take 8 hours, this item will take 4 hours, this item will take 10 hours, like that. And then you'll see how much hours I have in my particular sprint. So 3 dev, 1 QC. So 3 dev, and the effort estimation is on dev basis only. So 3 dev will be 440 into 3, 120 hours in 1 week, and 240 hours in 2 weeks.
Correct.
Right? So 240 hours is my capacity, and assuming no one is on leave, or let's say 1% or 2% are on leave, and total I'm saying 16 hours minus. So 240 minus, let's say 5 days people are off, so one person is on leave for 5 days, so 40 hours minus, so 200 is my total capacity. Yeah. So 200 is my capacity, and then I'll figure out what is my total effort in a sprint. So one item is 10 story points, other is 20 story points. There'll be story points will be in Fibonacci series. I'm just taking simple numbers. So I'll club out all of them together, and then I'll see how many items I can pick up in this particular sprint, and I'll move rest of the items to my sprint 2. Okay, and that's how I can proceed. Another one is relative estimation. So what happens in relative estimation, which is my Scrum concept, is that I will figure out uh, how big an item is in respect to the smallest item which I can work on. So for example, let's say there is a story I have identified which is the smallest story. So let's say it's a label change. So there is a label, and I just need to change the label, nothing else. Yeah, and the moment I make a change, it will start reflecting in the system. Testing is also minimal. So this is my shortest story possible. So I'll keep it as 1 story points. And then I'll compare all my other stories in comparison to this story, and I'll say how much is my story point. So if my story will take twice the effort, then it will be 2 story points. If my story will take thrice the effort, it will be 3 story points. If my story is 5 times more bigger or more complex than the smallest story, then my story is 5 story points. So I'll give story points to each of these stories, and then I'll sum up all the story points to arrive at how many total story points are in there in a particular sprint. And then I'll say, uh, you know on my full capacity, when all the 5 developers were available, and sorry, all the 3 developers were available, and they didn't take any leaves, or there were no holidays. So on my full capacity, I delivered 50 story points. And this time, my capacity is let's say 10% less. So how many story points I'll deliver? I'll deliver 45 story points, 10% less story points I'll deliver, right? Same proportion. So I'll deliver 45 story points in this particular sprint. And my first story is 10 story points, second story is 2 story points, sorry, 20 story points. So total 30 story points will be covered in these two stories. Third story is 15 story points. So I can deliver only these three stories. Rest everything I need to move out. Like that, you will do the planning. Yeah. Is it too confusing? Bhushan?
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible now.
Okay, okay, yeah. I got what you are saying. I have one cross question for that, but before that, I have another question. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you have planned 10 story point to get completed, but you get to know that there is some bug and which cannot be fixed in the current sprint. So what will be the ideal situation you will do? You will try to complete that bugs in the current sprint only by stretching few hours, or you will move that particular bug to the next sprint. So how you will do, or how you
See,
will plan?
yeah. So when the sprint planning happens, right? So I'm
Hmm.
assuming that bug was not present at that time.
Correct.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so all the bugs that I will encounter or I will, note down will obviously be part of my upcoming sprints. I won't include anything in my current sprint until and unless it is stopping all the development. So the bug, uh, if a new bug is identified, uh,
Hmm.
it will be part of my upcoming sprints. But if it is a bug which is stopping my current sprint development, or which is impacting a bigger area or anything, then what I
Hmm.
will do is I'll do a sprint planning in the middle of the sprint, and I'll take out one item and replace it with the bug. Yeah, so I'll
Okay. Okay.
identify how much effort this bug fixing will take. Let's say it will take half a day. Sorry, it's 2 story points. Then I'll take out something worth 2 story points out of the sprint, and then I'll include the bug in.
Okay. So let's say you are on a 6 day or 7 day of the sprint, and
Mhm.
you got to know that there are for one PBI or one user story, there are three bugs that QA have identified. Like QA developer have submitted the and QA is testing, and while testing they have identified for this user story or PBI there are three bugs, and out of developer said I can accommodate one, but two I need to move it to the next sprint. So
Hmm.
what do you think? That is the ideal case, or developer has to complete those two bugs as we have planned to complete or deliver the 10 user story or that particular PBI in the as a part of current sprint.
Yeah, so whatever we can fix is as part of the current sprint, right? We will do that.
Mm,
But if we are extending the sprint, we won't change the sprint rhythm, right? Or we won't change the sprint frequency. So the next sprint is supposed to happen from next, let's say my first sprint is starting from Monday. Then
mm,
after 2 weeks, my next sprint is supposed to start from Monday onwards. I won't say that I need 2 more days for bug fixing. So let me start S2
mhm,
from Wednesday, right? I won't change the sprint frequency. So the rhythm will remain same. So it sprint all sprints will start from Monday only if my first sprint is starting from Monday, right? So
mhm.
that's fixed date, you can't change it. So that what that will entail is that your time is fixed, you can't change your time. It's 2 weeks, not a day more, not a day less,
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
right? So whatever you can do in these 2 weeks, you will do as in regards to the stories that you have picked up for this particular sprint, but you won't extend it further. If anything is not delivered, it will move to next sprint. It can be a user story also, it can be a bug also. Yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. So if there is a bug comes, then if it is not accommodable in the current sprint, then yeah, you have to basically move it to the next sprint.
So every
Yeah.
sprint, there will be stories which will be in reopened state and they will move to the next sprint. Now, when I'm doing sprint planning for the next sprint, I will also account for these stories and I'll see how much, because they will move to the next sprint itself. They won't remain in the same sprint. So at
Mm-hmm.
the end of the sprint, I will have only those items which are fully developed, fully closed. Yeah,
Oh.
anything which is not closed will definitely move to the next sprint. And when I'm planning for the next sprint, I will also account how much work is left in each of these stories. Yeah, there can be stories where the development has not started yet. There can be stories where development is in between. There can be stories where development is complete, but QC still needs to test it out, right? So
Correct.
I will account for all these stories first because I want to close out the items which are midway. So first of all, I'll see what is the capacity of my sprint. So let's say my capacity is 40 story points,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll see what is my velocity. So velocity was supposed to be 50, but because my capacity is 40, let's say I'll say I can deliver only 40 velocity in this particular sprint. Yeah. So according to the velocity, I'll then see how much work I can do. So let's say my carry forward stories will require 10 story points. So first of all, I'll take out these 10 because I have to finish the work which I have started, and then I'll plan for rest of the 30 story points, what new items can be picked up in this sprint.
Okay. Okay. Understood.
And
And
there can
when
be items where there is a major dependency. For example, I planned for an item and I thought that I'll get it completed. The story will be completed before the sprint starts, but the story
Mhm.
didn't started before the sprint start. But because it was a critical item, let's say I have kept the story in. But even after the sprint end, I was not able to get approval from the PO on the story. So in that case, I cannot, if the approval is not there, I will not include it in the next sprint, but I may keep it there, right? So case by case basis, it will depend how I want to proceed.
Okay.
Yeah, so it
Okay.
is possible that I don't include, because, and I'm foreseeing that the client will take, more than 2 weeks to, still to give approval on this story. Then I won't include it in my next sprint. I'll include it in future sprint, which is, two or three sprints down the line.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, some of the items I'll move to the next sprint. Some of the items I'll move further also.
Understood.
Yeah. Any other questions? So, request to all, we are talking about sprint planning today. Bhushan has a few questions which I have tried my best to give answers on. Yeah. So, if any of this sounds confusing, because I don't have a board and a marker, right? So, if you don't understand it, I'm happy to repeat. Yeah,
Hello.
I'm happy to repeat it. So, let me know. Please send me a request and I'll call you on stage and we can discuss more on the sprint planning. Yeah. Yes, Bhushan, you are audible now.
Okay. So what I was saying, so let's say there is a label change and verbiage change is there for
I'm sorry.
particular
What?
function that,
I'm
sorry,
sorry. What changed?
label
Little
change.
change. Okay.
Label change
Label.
is there that you need to update the label.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. So what you will effort, like while efforting it, that particular PBI, what you will effort it as a one or
Yes,
how?
it's the smallest story possible, right? So I'll give it one
Hmm.
story point.
Okay, but in actual, it is like few hours of work for developer. It might be 1 hour or 2 hour, and half an hour or 1 hour for let's say QA, and we are efforting as a one. So don't you think that if you effort such stories like 5 stories, then we are not utilizing our resource correctly? So it is actual work is like 3 hours, 2 hours for each resource, and still we are efforting as a one. And while calculating the sprint or effort for each resource, so our 5 efforts are gone into that. But it actual while development or testing it, it is actual work of 2 efforts only. But since we are don't have like what I can say. There is a provision to make it as a point 0.5 or 0.25. We are marking it as a 1. But if you are doing that, then we are doing wrong
No, we are
estimation,
not doing wrong
in my
estimation.
opinion.
We are taking we are
Huh?
taking a wrong approach. So here, what you are doing is you are assuming that one PD, one story point is equals to eight PDs, right? And that's how
Correct.
you are trying to calculate, and that's how you are saying, this is just a 5 minutes job, but still I'm counting 8 hours for it, and why does it's a wrong planning I'm doing, right? But the approach
Okay.
itself is wrong. You won't convert your story points into your efforts, into your PDs. If you do that, you are trying to bring in waterfall into your agile, right? Agile is different. The waterfall
Okay.
is different. In waterfall, you estimate in hours. In waterfall, you'll say this item
Hmm.
will take me 1 hour or 2 hours or 5 hours or 8 hours, right? In Scrum, you
Okay.
do relative estimation. You say this is my smallest story, and I'll take one story point for it, and this is
Hmm.
twice the this second story is twice than the first story. Then I'll take two story points for it, and you won't convert story points into hours. Story points are story points, they are relative estimation. Hours is absolute estimation, right? So you won't mix two things ideally. People do that, that's practical, because they are still living in the waterfall world, where and because they are more comfortable converting everything into PDs and then do the planning, because that's how they have been doing it, or they have learned it that way. But that's not the correct approach. The approach itself, where you are saying one story points is 8 PDs, is wrong. So your question itself becomes invalid, because you are not supposed to do that as a project manager. You are supposed to keep your relative estimation as a relative estimation. So what used to happen in agile, in waterfall world, was that one person who is a senior developer, he'll say, oh, I can do this work in
Hmm.
1 hour. And then there is a junior developer,
Hmm.
he'll be like, oh, I'll take 8 hours for this, right? So project
Hmm. Hmm.
manager
Hmm.
used to consider who is giving the effort estimate, right? But the same story can be 1 hour for one person, 8 hours for second person in waterfall world.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Hmm.
in agile world, one story is same effort, or it's same work, irrespective of who is doing this work. So they don't keep the person doing the work into consideration at all in relative estimation. They'll say, this is my smallest story, let me put one story point on it. My second story is twice as complex, or thrice as complex, or 5 times as complex, or 8 times as complex, and accordingly I'll give a story points of 3, 5, or 8, or 13, or 21, right? They'll compare
Okay.
two stories in regards to each other. They don't say that one person will work on it and he'll take 1 hour, or other person will work on it and he'll take 8 hours, right? So they'll be like, this is twice the work, irrespective of who is doing the work. So it is possible that my two story point story, one person will take 5 minutes and other person will take 2 hours. But that does not matter in agile world. They are like, how it you know is it, they don't see, right, that who will be doing work on it. They are like, at the end of the sprint, I have delivered two story points, I have delivered twice the work which I would have put in the label change story, right? So they do like that. You are not supposed to convert your relative you are not supposed to mix relative estimation and absolute estimation. Yeah.
So how you will do it correctly? Let's say I'll go to that example. I have three developer. Okay, I have like consider 10 efforts for each developer while considering one day as a one effort. So I have 30 efforts of work that I can do in the current
No, so
sprint. Okay.
don't call it effort, right? So it's story points.
Mm.
So
Yeah,
my
story
my
point. Correct.
developer one, I won't even call it developer one, developer two, developer three, right? I'll say,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, uh, I'll say all my three developers. So I will have my development team's availability 100% of the time, or 80% of the time, or 90% of the time, like that. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so in this particular sprint, my developers will be available 80% of the time. So they'll do
Correct.
80% of the average velocity in this sprint. So if my average velocity is 100 story points in a sprint, I'll deliver 80 story points in this particular sprint.
Okay.
Yeah. So
So,
you
still,
won't see whether the person is available for 8 hours or 10 hours or 150 hours.
yeah,
You
yeah.
will see how many
I'm
stories.
considering full
Huh.
capacity. Yeah, I'm considering full capacity. So let's say so while efforting, you have to consider QA effort as well, correct?
No, it depends. It
Hello.
depends on what all you are considering in your story points. So story points is more like development effort only.
Mm,
Okay.
okay. So you are not considering.
There
So
are
let's say I have
there are
planning.
two ways basically, right? One way
Mm-hmm.
is you take the efforts from development team only, which project managers find it most easier, and then you apply a
Mm-hmm.
proportion of it to find out the BA effort and the QC effort. So how they will go for it? They'll ask for the development team. How big the story is. So if we are counting effort in hours, let's say, and the developer says this story will take 50 hours to develop, right? And then they'll say,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let me put 20% as BA effort. So they'll say, 20% of 50, that is 10 hours as BA effort. And they'll say, 30% of dev effort as QC. So they'll say 15 hours as QC. So they'll sum it up and they'll say 50 development effort plus 10 BA effort, 60 plus 15 QC effort is equal to 75. So this story total effort I'll take 75 hours, right? So that's one way of doing it. Second way of doing it is ask each team individually. They'll ask you, go and ask, BA how much time you will take, ask from developer how much time you will take, and ask from QC team how much time you will take, right? And uh, project managers do not usually prefer this approach because there is a possibility of becoming a bottleneck. So you go to BA and ask him, how much time you'll take. Your BA will say, okay, let me analyze all these items and I'll give you a response in 5 days time, right? So you are just waiting for efforts to come from BA team, from QC team, and so on and so forth, right? So people
Mm-hmm.
generally do not prefer this approach. Project managers do not prefer this approach. They'll just take dev efforts and then they apply a proportion on it, and then in the end they'll apply a buffer on it, right? That the productivity is 6 hours out of 8 hours, like that. So they'll do calculations like that. Okay.
Okay. Mm.
It's a bit confusing, I can understand, right? Yeah, because
Yeah, like Fibonacci series itself consume like confusing for me. Like one three, so they are not doing it rightly in my current organization. So they are like as a label change, they will say one story point for another if there is a label there. So once 8 efforts is utilized, they will say I cannot pick more work than that. So that is itself completely a wrong approach that I am observing. But I am just trying to find out what is the best way to follow all the standard process or what others way I can bring. So these are some things, I'm working as a BA, but they are still expecting me to manage all these things. But the way they are managing it currently, it is completely wrong. That I get to know that within few
no,
months
yeah,
or
so, and
within
believe me,
few.
no one does it correctly. Yeah, it's a common story across all the organizations, all projects. No one does it correctly. So each PM does it, his or her own way, right? So don't
Mm,
worry too much about it. But I'm just conscious. So as a BA, are they expecting you to do effort estimation and things like that as well?
Yeah, yeah. They are expecting from me those things. So
But
I was just observing
will
for.
you also have the authority, associated with the PM role? Because you are performing a PM role, right? So will you have the authority as well? So will you be in a position to go to developer and say that, you are not delivering as expected, or can do or prioritize this work for this week? Are you also doing the resource allocation alongside?
Uh, I'm completely like, it just has been 1.5 months to this new organization. So I'm in a process of firstly observing it and implementing the right approach.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, so I'll go with some data. So for that, I just need input. Like, this is the right way, this is the wrong way. The way you explain that, what is the difference between one story point and like they are doing it like, it will require three efforts. So they are three efforts means developer and QA three efforts.
Okay.
Two will be from development, one will be from QA, but they are not doing it like relative estimation. Like this is the my minor story, it will take one, and for second story it is twice of work, so I'll assign it as a two. But they are doing the estimation based on available efforts, and they are taking 8 efforts only. And the how they are like what they are saying, one effort is 1.5 days, so that is itself wrong. So that is also still confusing. Like 1.5 day or 1.25 day, they are not sure about that as well.
Hmm.
So these are the some gaps I have identified, and I want to implement the correct approach. Or like either we can go with the hours. We'll simply say one day is equal to one effort. So let's say I have four resource for each project. So I am just going to consider developer and QA hours into, not a BA hours. So I'll just say, for each resource, 40 hours per week, 80 hours. So within that, if you consider six, then 30, 60 hours
So
available for each resource. So for development, 180 hours, and for QA, 60
while
hours, another 60
while
hours.
you
Yeah.
are summing up all the teams hours in for one work, you have to keep things separately, right? Because when BA is working, developer will not be working on the same thing. When developer until the developer finish, QC will not be starting on the same thing, right? So you need to have different planning for BA, Dev, and QC cycles. So if your sprint one is
Mm,
comprising of development, so plan it like this. So in let's say there is one item, right, one feature per se. So you will say
mm,
this
mm.
feature will be part of sprint 3, right? So sprint 3 onwards my development will start, and my total dev effort is, let's say, 100, and I deliver 50 in let's forget about relative estimation or absolute estimation in this case. So you say I develop 50 per sprint. So this item will take me 2 sprints to finish the work. That is 1 month to finish the work. 2 week sprint. Yeah, yeah. 2 weeks per sprint. Let's assume that. And then my BA work for this same feature will not start in sprint 3. My BA work will start somewhere in sprint 1, right? So
Correct.
then you will say,
Correct.
okay, in the first week, my BA will do the analysis. In the second week, my BA will write the stories and get an approval on the stories, right? Or my second week, BA will
Mm-hmm.
do the solutioning with PO. In third week, BA will write the stories. In fourth week, BA will seek the approval. And now, because fourth week is just approval time, my fourth week, BA will start working on some other feature as well. So you will include 2 features in sprint 2 for BA and 1 feature in sprint 1 for BA, right? And accordingly, QC for for sprint 3 items will start 50% it will be completed in sprint 3 itself, and rest of it 50% will be completed in sprint 4. So you have to plan out separately. It's overwhelming, but if you are trying to say total effort of dev and QC, it won't be parallel, right? Or it is supposed to be sequential, so it should be planned separately, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Understood. But how, see, we are in the middle of sprint right now. We are in our sprint
Hmm.
40s. So they are doing like this. So how I can change it then?
So, see, first of
So
all,
we are doing
yeah.
they,
So
yeah.
if
Mm-hmm.
if you have the authority, right? If you don't have the authority, Dev and QC is not listening to you. I'm not sure how you will proceed, right? You need to have the authority, and that's why I'm asking the question as well. So you need to have the authority to make a change, first of all, right? So let's say you have the authority to make a change. So first of all, you discuss and decide with the team, right, whether they want to do
Mm-hmm.
relative estimation or whether they want to do absolute estimation, right? So whether they want to give you estimates in hours or whether they want to give you estimates in story points. It's okay to have estimation in hours if everyone is comfortable with it, even when you're working in Scrum, because whatever makes more sense for the team, right, that should be adopted rather than trying to adopt something which no one is clear on. Okay. So if
Correct.
everyone is comfortable with hours, then say, okay, let me, ask everyone in hours only, all that effort in hours only. Then second thing you have to decide is whether I'm going to ask hours from BA, Dev and QC separately, or I'm going to apply a figure on the dev efforts for each of the items. Like, I gave an example. So if dev is taking 100 hours for one feature, BA will take 20 hours for writing the stories and approval, and QC will take 30 hours for testing out the story, like that, right? So you identify a percentage and you apply for BA and QC efforts. That's one way. Or you ask for BA efforts separately, QC efforts separately, and dev efforts separately. Yeah, second thing. Third thing, what you have to do is establish a common understanding. So you have to prepare some kind of metrics to say, how much effort should be counted in if item is highly complex, medium complex, low complex, right? If POC is supposed to be done, what is the clarity on the requirements? Is it very clear, less clear, ambiguous, right? You don't know anything on it. So like that, you have to figure out some matrices and then say, is it a bigger technical change or a smaller technical change? Is it just a configuration item, or this will need a code change, like that, right? So you have to discuss and agree with the team, development team specifically, to draw out or chalk out a matrix which will serve as a base for your estimation. You don't want everyone to do their own estimation, right? One senior resource is saying this is 1 hour of work, and junior resource is saying, oh no, this is 8 hours of work, right? You don't want that clashes. So you have to establish that if it's a this kind of item, right? Is it just a UI change or a table change or a configuration change, like that? So you've identified the matrices based on which development team gives you estimate, and then prepare a matrix of it or prepare a chart of it which will say, if my item is low complexity, high clarity, then I'm going to give X story points. If my item is of high complexity, low clarity, then I'm going to give Y story points, like that, right? So set up some standards to tell the team how they should estimate it, so that they can also follow it, and give you standard estimates rather than giving you estimates from the air every time, if you see what I mean, right? So let's take an example of severity, right? So QC has very clear cut severity definitions given to them, that anything which is making the system stop, QC can't progress on it at all. That's an A category item. If they can progress on some modules of it but not all cases for it, it's a B severity item, B severity bug, right? If they can proceed with it but one particular case is failing, one particular functional requirement is failing, it's a C category bug. So they are given these standard definitions of severity, right? Similarly, you have to give standard definition of effort estimation to the team. Yeah.
Okay.
So once you have
So
established the standards, then and then once you have decided, with who will be giving the efforts, then you can get the efforts correctly, and then you can plan accordingly.
okay, okay. But and how I can change this approach? Like what we are doing, we are if we are doing 2 week sprint, so we are expecting 10 PBS development has to be completed as well as testing has to be completed within that sprint. So right now we are in the middle of all these things. So how I can change it?
No,
So
so
like 2 weeks will be the
no, so
yeah.
don't make any radical changes. First of all, right? People hate change. That's a hard fact. The more changes you will try to
Yeah,
bring
yeah.
in, the more enemy you will become of the team, right? So don't try to bring in drastic changes, first of all, right? So if your team is saying, or if your management expects that whatever stories you have picked up in one particular sprint, those needs to be developed and tested and in the same
Mm.
sprint, then what you will do is you will say to the team that the development needs to complete it by the end of first week. right? And in the second week,
Okay.
my development team will work on bug fixes only, right? And uh, it's easier to give you an example from a 3 week sprint. Yeah, 2 weeks is too short to do everything until and unless you are just picking up 4 or 5 items in a particular release. So let's say there is a 3 week
Mhm.
sprint. So what you will say is, my team will do development for the first week, right? And then they will make a
Mhm.
delivery to the QC team, and then development will do pick up stories in the second week, and my QC will test out my week one story development in second week, and in the third week my developer will continue or finish up rest of the items plus bug fixes, and my QC will finish the testing of V2 items plus anything smaller bits that will come in the last minute, delivered to them in the last minute. And that's how I will proceed. And if you think that developers will be left over with some time in the week 3, then you will plan out
Mhm.
some technical changes or some old items, some backlog items into that mix, which are not urgent ones, right? So just to keep them occupied. So you will plan out for 2 weeks of development work only for them. You won't plan out for 3 weeks of development work for them and then think that they are giving delivery to QC on Friday of week 3, and QC will test it out over the weekend and give it to you. Yeah, so don't plan out which is not practically possible. So in that case, you will plan out for just 2 weeks of development, and accordingly you will just include those many items which they can easily develop, or which they can develop and deliver in 2 weeks. You won't plan out 3 weeks of user stories for them. You will plan out some bug fixes for them. So you will plan out bug fixes of the stories they have delivered in the 2 weeks, and you will plan out for some non-urgent backlog items, uh, but you won't plan out for 3 weeks of user stories for them and expect QC to finish the testing in the same sprint.
Okay. So let's say if we have to complete within the 2 week sprint itself. So 7 days for development and three days bandwidth for the bug fixing. So
Yes.
like simultaneous testing will be there. So it sounds good. Or like 7 days of development. So we will plan for 7 days of work itself. 3 days we will keep buffer as a bug fixing, and simultaneously, let's say they complete the one story, they will pass it to QA, and the QA will start testing of it. So what do you think on this approach?
See, how will they pass on to the QA? Will it need a release? Because if it does need a release, you don't want a downtime every day, right? So you will give them a release after week 1. You won't give them a release every day, right? Is or do
Correct.
you have advanced systems in place that can give your QC deliveries every day? Do you have DevOps kind of a system, or
Yeah, DevOps is there. DevOps is
so
there.
you can give QC
So
deliveries
yeah,
every day?
no, no, no. No, no, no. They do not deliver every day. That has to be there in our last organization. So whatever you develop, you deploy it on QA environment, and QA can start testing it. So here they are having build that this is mobile
Hmm.
application.
Yeah.
So
So
these guys are
you won't
making
deliver every day, right? So if you
correct.
deliver on day 7, right? That is
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday of next week. Then QC won't get
Mm-hmm.
enough time to test out seven days worth of development. So what you have to do is you have to plan for a deployment on Thursday, let's say. So development team will work for 4 days and give a deployment on Tuesday, on Thursday EOD. QC will start testing those items. Development team will give another drop on Tuesday next week in week 2, and then rest of the 3 days will be for bug fixes. Right? You won't wait for 7 days for QC to just waiting for the build, right? So what
Mm-hmm.
QC will do in the first
So
4 days, they'll create the test cases or the test plan, the test
correct, correct.
scenarios, right? So when
Yeah.
your sprint will start for 4 days, the QC will create test cases. Development team will do the development. A drop should be given to QC. right? Friday onwards, QC will start testing of those 4 days work of effort. So they'll get 3 days to test out 4 days of effort, right? Which is reasonable. And
Mhm.
then, development will continue for another 3 days. So 7 days you'll plan for development. And then, rest of the 3 days for QC to wrap up, as well as a development team to do the bug fixes and give a deployment maybe Thursday next week in week two, so that QC can get Friday for testing out uh, d- um, the bugs which have been delivered to bug fixes, right? Only then you will be able to close out. And then on Friday, dev team can be involved in a planning of S41 items like that.
Okay. Okay. Understood.
Something like that,
So,
right?
and if they are
Again,
getting,
2 weeks is
yeah,
the
if,
smaller sprint, so you have to plan accordingly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just giving some
Yeah.
recommendations based on my experience, but you can get better recommendations from someone who has worked in a project management role, right? I'm a business analyst, so I have theoretical knowledge, or I can share my experience based on my experiences so far. But yeah, better person will be
Mhm.
some PM who is able to better guide you on it.
In last organization, we are doing it on the hours basis, and that is completely different. Like we are having 1 month sprint, and whatever items we are planning. So what it is like, once you develop it, you will deploy it in the UAT environment. QA will start it. So initial days they used to write test cases, and once they receive item in their plate, they start testing. And what we are expecting, whatever items we are planned, we have to deliver, or there is a release plan at the month end. So we used to deliver at the mountain, and the resource differences, like they were kind of like experienced resources are there, so there is no problem. Like even if we got any last moment feedback from user, so still we are accommodating it. But here, like, we have some junior resource, and I feel sometimes like so they are giving effort for small stuff as well, things as well, like the more efforts that I feel, but that nothing in my hand, or that nothing I can control. But I just want to, make it some standard way. So yeah.
Hmm. But I'm just, wondering if you are working on this sprint planning, and if you're going into so much lower level details of efforts and all, then when are you getting time to
Hmm.
do the business analysis? Your business analysis is definitely going to take a hit on, the quality of deliverables are definitely going to take a hit if you're getting involved in project management activities. If you see what I mean, right?
Yeah,
So
there is
you
no
have to no,
yeah,
you
yeah,
have to give user stories to the team so that they can work for 7 days at least, right? In a particular
yeah.
sprint. And
Hmm.
that will mean that and if you are the only BA in the team, right? It's
Yeah.
very it's going to be very overwhelming for you, right? To write the stories, get
Mhm.
approvals from from the business, understand the requirements from the business, and then do the planning and be involved in project management activities as well. Um, so just make sure that your the quality of user stories are not going to take a hit. I'll tell you why, right? Because project management activities, no one is going to give you a credit, right? They are like, there is no project manager, you do it and you'll do it, and they'll be like, okay, it's okay, right? But if you don't deliver quality in your user stories, which is your core skill, right? You hired as a business
Mhm.
analyst, right? If you don't give quality in your stories,
Mhm.
there are too many bugs, there is too much rework, and things like that happen. Everyone is going to put you in on the spot and say, you're not delivering. So PM work for you
Mhm.
is going to be a thankless job. That's what I'm, you know.
Yeah, yeah, understood, understood. That I'm just doing it for, like, having some experience, or like I want to gain some experience into that. And second, like, if I do those things as well, then options will be open for me in future. Like I need to go this way, like,
Not
project
necessarily.
management, scrum
Yeah,
master.
not necessarily, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So if it is your interest area, and if you think that it's going to help you in future, it's okay. but just make sure that while you are on the job, don't uh, impact the quality of the deliverables that you are making, because those are your core deliverables, right? Until and unless they are ready to move you into a PM role. So if your internal
Mm-hmm.
organization is like, okay, you do this PMing thing for another 6 months, and then we'll make you a project manager, then it's all good. But if they are giving
Yeah.
you a BA role, the moment you fail, start failing to deliver because your focus is on PM activities, right? That very day, people will start blaming you. So just be a bit conscious. Yeah, I'm just making you a
Yeah. I feel that whenever I have initiated this discussion with like few of the developer, like I see these gaps. So they are like, no, we are not going to change it. So you mentioned it earlier that you will be enemy of the team. So I don't want to be, but I just wanted to make that we will
And
utilize our resource
if you
correctly.
remember, I asked you,
And
have they given you the authority as well? Because if they have not given you the
uh,
authority, and if they are asking you to do these activities, right, like planning, and if you are not in a position where
mhm,
you are able to convince the team to work according to your plan, then it's a short
mhm.
formula for failure, right? So you are making a number
No,
of
no,
plans,
what?
and team is not following it, or team is like, who are you? So yeah,
No,
you might
yeah,
you
I
might not
understood.
succeed. So just make sure that your seniors are aware, that yeah,
Yeah,
just keep them
I
informed.
actually discussed with my director as well. I actually discussed this with my director as well. So what she said, like you can have a meeting with them, like architecture and the dev leads. Then I had also discussing with the product manager as well for those things. Like I am seeing these gaps. I am preparing some data. But yeah, so those things first needs to discuss with the dev teams as well. We should have some agreement. So that is why I'm just, in a position of understanding it or like, preparing some data, what is the standard way. So I'll propose and I need their agreement or everyone should agree on that. Then and only then we are going to, if they say no, then it is fine. I'll leave it within after few weeks or few months. If they are not going to agree, then I'll not, going to spend my time on that particular activity. But this is just, I thought, I find out that these are the gaps. So I thought, I can highlight those or this is the better way to do this. So those those were my like, that is my
Yeah.
purpose, I can
See,
say.
there is a difference, right? So you are right now treading on a thin ice. So if you would have established yourself first with the team in the organization, right? If you have worked in the organization for 4, 5 years, 6 years, right, where you are in a position where no one can challenge your authority, or no one can challenge you, or no one can move you, because you are such a critical resource in the organization, then if you would have been involved into such activities, then it would have been much safer for you right now than right now, because right now you have just joined in the organization, right? People uh,
Correct.
have not yet accepted you, people have not recognized your worth, people have not yet recognized your skill set, right? People have not trusted you
Mhm.
yet. So if you see, PM is a role which is always a blame role, I'll say, right? Everyone curses their PM. No one appreciates their PM, right? It's the role
Yes.
itself is like that you will be the enemy of the team for sure, for always, right? So everyone uh, will crib about the way you are working, right? And you have not established yourself, and you are going into PM activities when you have been hired as a BA. If you would have been hired as a PM, then also it would have made sense, right? Because right now you don't have an authority, you don't have the backing of your experience, or you don't have support of the people, you
Mhm.
don't have trust of the people, right? So it
Mhm.
will be risky for you to get involved into
Okay.
these activities. So my suggestion for you will be to, one, take everyone into confidence, right? And say that, though I'm doing this work, I still want to keep my focus on the BA activities, for which I have hired you have hired me, right? And I won't
Mhm.
be spending more
Mhm.
than 20% of my bandwidth or 10% of my the activities, right? So just get them to agree and not take. So your management should not start giving you each and everything PM related, at this time, right? Maybe in future, or maybe if you can get an agreement with them that they will be moving you into PM role in future, then that's okay, right? So one thing is just have a heart to heart talk with your seniors. Second thing is
Yeah.
be very uh, careful while talking to the team, right? So don't
Mm-hmm.
appear too bossy, don't appear uh, that you are bringing a lot of changes. People resist change, yeah. So try to gel with
Mm-hmm.
the team first, right? And third thing that you can do is do your planning, do your analysis, but don't present it by your name. Give it to someone higher in the authority, right? So you will
Mm-hmm.
be losing the credit for it, right? Because that other person is going to take all the credit of the planning bits, but it will you know make you a bit safer because you won't be there in the picture. Plus you will gain the experience of how to do the planning and all, if you see what I mean, right? So you will
Mm-hmm.
lose on the credit, but your senior will know that the credit goes to you, right? So they'll try to keep you close, and that's what you want, right? So you want seniors to recognize your efforts. It doesn't matter if development team or QC team knows your efforts, if you
Mm-hmm.
see what I mean, right?
Correct.
So do the planning, do the resourcing, everything, but pass it on to your seniors. That's one approach that you can take. But yeah, just be
Mm-hmm.
a bit careful here, right? So I have burnt my hands very badly recently. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
temporary.
Thanks for that. So, see, what while interviewing, they have already told me that we are expecting you to manage like the sprint activities. Like I had explained that I'm doing this in my last organization. So they said that you can. We will be expecting, like, since we don't have Scrum Master, so all of these Scrum activities that we are expecting you to do all these tasks. So right now, what I'm doing, like leading stand-ups or leading demo call. So sprint planning and feature groom is still leading by product manager, but these other calls I have started already leading.
Yeah, so you are in a
So
contradictory role, right? So Scrum Master role is contradictory to
yeah.
PO role, or BA role. So as a BA,
Hmm.
you would be thinking of something. A Scrum Master is thinking of something else. So as a BA, you will be thinking, okay, I'll take 3 days to complete this activity. As a Scrum Master, you will be needing the person to complete this activity in one day, right? So they are contradictory roles.
Hmm.
So I know many organizations, they give same roles to same people, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's a challenging role to be in because of the contradictions, right? So if as a Scrum Master you want this some activity to be completed in one day, and as a BA you know that this activity will take 3 days, whom will you go to? You won't have anyone to go to, right? To make a decision for you. So
Yes, yes.
so yeah, and what if there is a contradiction between BA and a dev? It things happen, right? So BA is saying one thing, dev is
Yeah.
saying another thing. So that's the time when Scrum Master has to pitch in and resolve the conflicts. But if you yourself is the Scrum Master, who will resolve your conflicts?
Yeah, that is the challenging
Yeah.
thing.
So
Hmm. Yeah, I know like why you are saying this. Like, and that I had also observed. So if I started like, question or changing, like we can change the approach. So no one want to like, change what are the things going on. No one to change their approach. So it's going like, this is the way we are doing. So we'll do it this way. We're not going to change it. So yeah, and I have personally observed this. So yeah, I need to be very, very careful.
hmm, yeah.
Yeah.
So establish yourself first, right? So as you said, you are observing the team right now, right? So be in
Mm.
observing mode for some more time, as much time as you can be in, right, before making any change. So let people accept you first, let people trust you first.
Understood. So what I did in the past two sprints, I am just taking effort individual wise. For each story, if you are giving a 5 effort estimation, so what will be the exact QA effort and what will be the day effort? So that I am managing in Excel currently, just for observing purpose. So or have some data. So maybe in future I can use that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I think
try
yeah, that's all I
yeah,
have.
try to get in touch with your project manager or product manager as well, and ask him similar questions and think check with him how he would have handled it. Yeah, handle these scenarios. So they can give you more insights. I've just told you sort of bookish knowledge or my observations of the sprint planning, because I don't get involved in effort estimation and these bits much. Yeah. My focus is on what all
Okay.
stories are going in and what BA team is doing, and when BA team will be making the deliveries. But overall sprint planning is something
Mhm.
that PMs and Scrum Masters will do. So um, yeah, they are a person who is actually in that role will be in a better position to guide you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll I'm in a process of going with such people. Few days back also I have been in the
Mm.
group, so some people respond and like I had some conversation with them. But yeah, like everyone have different opinion, everyone have different experience. So yeah, just but today I got like what will say I got more clarity because it is in detail discussion, and on phone you cannot talk for like more than 10-15 minutes. So
Mm.
so by today's call, I get to know about more things about efforting and estimation. What are the bookish knowledge or whatever you say or whatever your experience. But yeah, this is like relative estimation thing, Fibonacci, how we exactly do estimation. So those things I get to know that. So that can be useful
Yeah,
for me.
glad to
Yeah.
be of assistance, Bhushan. So,
Yeah.
what I would really love is, so as I mentioned, we will be closing these sessions after the next call, right? So, 31st August we'll have one more session, and then we'll take a break. So we take a break, September, October onwards because of festival seasons and all. So we'll take a break, and we'll reconvene next year, January or February. So I would really appreciate if you can take a session in January for the team, and you can share your experience on, how you got involved in the PM activities, what you did, how you brought the team on the same page, how you implemented it, or what all you did. Uh, uh,
Exactly.
it,
Yeah.
it will be a really good discussion on, or people will learn from your experience how you uh, s- delivered the expectations. So if you can take a
Yeah,
session,
for sure,
yeah.
for sure. If I am able to implement the change, definitely I'll take a session. Even not, then I'll share my. I definitely I can share my
Yeah.
experience. You cannot change suddenly. So the like you mentioned it. So that's why I have some weekend plan. But you mentioned that there will be a, break after two sessions. So I have cancelled it, and I wanted to speak on this topic, and I
Oh,
wanted to
sorry to make you cancel your
yeah
plan.
some inputs from. No, no, no. But even it is cancelled. But these things are very insightful for me, and it is useful for me.
Yeah,
Yeah. So that definitely
glad to be
helps.
of assistance. So thanks, Subhushan. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
And thank you so much for you, Shipra, yeah, for all this.
yeah, you're most welcome. Um, so yeah, I didn't receive the more requests. So Chetan just sent me a request some time back. I can't see him there. Chetan, are you there? He might have dropped off. So yeah. Shall we wrap up the session for today then, Bhushan?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. We already exceeded our time. Like it is
Yeah.
1 hour time
Yeah.
mostly.
So thanks for requesting for the session, and thanks for your feedback as well. So uh, see you
Yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks all.
Bye.
Thanks all for joining in, and thanks to the listeners as well who will listen in this recording
Yeah.
later. So thank you. Thanks all.
Yeah. Have a great weekend, all of you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Happy weekend. Bye bye.